Okay, so I think we're going to get started. Today, I'd like to welcome everyone for attending today's CLARiTI webinar, where we're going to discuss the flow between the ADRC sites with NACC and the Subaward setup process for the CLARiTI project. So here's today's agenda. So we're going to start with some updates on the study. For this, we're going to hear from both Sterling Johnson and also Erin Chin from Wisconsin. Then we're going to switch over to NACC. We'll hear from Heather O'Connell on both the overview of the Subaward setup process and also the overview of the site payment process. And we'll also go through contacts with NACC at that point. And then we'll hopefully have time for at least 10 minutes or more of questions at the end. So if you have questions throughout the webinar, please put them in the chat, and we might be able to answer some of those in real time. And then we'll address many questions at the end. At the end, you can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to unmute yourself to ask questions. So with that, I'll pass it over to Sterling Johnson.
Thank you, Beth. Thanks for joining, everybody. We really appreciate you supporting this project and supporting how we as a group of ADRCs can make an impact on our field. And our overall vision here is to make an accurate diagnosis, to know what is present in our individual participants so that they can get on the right therapies, and also so that we can have better tools in the future for clinical practice. This is a massive project, as you all know. There's so many investigators involved, and we just continue to thank and just so grateful for everybody who's involved here, both on the academic side, on the infrastructure side, and also in industry, our industry partners who are supporting this project. Let's go to the next slide. Just to remind everybody about the overall theme here is to identify and parse the various intersecting causes of cognitive impairment. We won't take a lot of time on this slide, but just to orient you to this is the potential and the promise of the ADRC system in this kind of work, where we have this clinical heterogeneity, and we're using that to our advantage in this case to do some science that couldn't be done in any other setting besides the ADRC system. Let's go on to the next slide. Our major goals are to identify an etiologic profile using imaging and plasma and other antemortem biomarkers and data points, and we'll eventually validate these with neuropathology. And that's, again, one of the strengths of the ADRC system is our strong culture of brain donation. Keep going, Heather. We'll provide resources to implement standard biomarker methods across the program. And throughout all of this, we want to be thinking about diversity and generalizability of our results right from the get-go. Our overall goal, as you all know, is roughly 2,000 participants from the ADRC system. We think there's a recruitable pool of well over 11,000, and we just need 2,000 of those for this project. The data all belong to you as a site. They also go up to the national side of things to be part of this national system. There's 2 time points about 2 years apart. And yeah, let's go on to the next one. The way that all this fits into the milieu of the ADRC ecosystem is that the data will be uploaded to CLARiTI. It'll be in a folder right next to SCAN. The SCAN team, Bill Jaggis, Cliff Jack, will be analyzing the bulk of the CLARiTI data, just like they do the regular SCAN data. And these data will be joined with all the other stuff, all the other data that are at NACC, and all the ancillary projects that NACC that NACC feeds into, like the ADGC genetics projects, for example. And ultimately, these data will be available to researchers everywhere, and that's going to really be an incredible advance for our field. And we'll talk more about that side of things in future webinars, but today we're going to focus on the subaward process and the logistics of getting this up and running at your site. Let's go on to the next slide. I want to thank everybody for completing the site survey. There's some of you who are still waiting on some information from your site, and we appreciate you getting that done as soon as you can. We're going to use this information to start customizing and structuring the subawards for each of the sites. So a big thank you to all of those who've got this done so far. And it's okay if you haven't got it done yet. There's time to get that done. Let me turn it over to Erin Chin, who's the overall project manager for CLARiTI.
Thanks, Sterling. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm here to give you some CLARiTI updates. So number one, I want to start off with NACC has graciously given us some airtime at the NACC spring meeting coming up in May in Austin, Texas. So we will be having a CLARiTI breakout session. That's currently scheduled for May 6th over the lunch hour. We will be providing lunch and there will be an invite to follow. You likely already know that we have received IRB approval. Phoebe is going to put a link in the chat there just so everybody has a link to our approved consent templates. So again, your site will need to add your site-specific information. You can already get started on your seed application with your local institutions. Please let us know if you want somebody from the CLARiTI team to review those before you submit. We're happy to look those over. And then we will be getting a change of protocol coming soon within the next couple of weeks here. We've received some really valuable feedback from a lot of site investigators with some suggestions. So we will have version 2 coming soon, and we'll release that to everybody when that's available. Our single IND has been submitted. So that was submitted on February 6th. So we hope to hear back on that soon. And just to remind everybody, that single IND is to cover sites that will be receiving delivery of MK6240, NAV 4694, and PI 2620. So those 3 tracers will be covered under that single IND. And then you've likely already seen our first iteration of the CLARiTI newsletter. So we're going to get on a bi-weekly schedule here with that newsletter just to give everybody site updates. We have a new contact list now that the sites have submitted that site survey. So thank you for adding all that contact information. We also have a link on our site too, where you can add contact information if there's somebody new on your team that needs to be added to the CLARiTI contact list. So speaking of our website, we've got a CLARiTI concierge. So we do have 2 CLARiTI project coordinators. They're assigned, half of the sites. There's a link there so you can see which coordinator your site has been assigned to. This is really going to be your main point of contact for running CLARiTI at your site. Somebody to walk you through the process, help troubleshoot any issues that you're having. We really want to make this as easy on you as possible. So your project coordinator, along with myself, we're really going to be available to help your sites with anything that they need. That being said, we are in the process of creating a site handbook that we are going to be releasing to sites as they get up and running. So really a handbook that's going to include, manuals, SOPs, any information that you're going to need in order to run CLARiTI at your sites. We've been really enjoying our site initiation meetings. We've completed 26 so far, and the rest are going to be scheduled in March. These have been incredibly informative. It's been really nice to meet all the study teams, just hear about the nuances that each site is dealing with. We have also created an FAQ page on our CLARiTI website. And really, this is based on your feedback and the questions that we've seen coming in. So thank you for that. We continue to update our FAQ page. Likely, this will be updated the next week or so with some more subaward information as we get additional questions. So next slide, please. Thank you, Heather. And one of the things that we talk about on the site initiation meeting is the site readiness checklist. I'm not going to go over everything on this slide here, but there's going to be a link in the chat to the site readiness checklist. This is just a list of things that your site will need to complete in order to get up and running with recruiting and enrolling for CLARiTI at your site. This is going to be something that Kelsey and Hunja, the project coordinators, will really be walking you through. So if you have any of these tasks already completed, you reach out to your project coordinator to let them know. We're going to have a REDCap database where we're going to be tracking all of this information. And we really want this information to be available to all the sites as well. So we're going to have a snapshot in that biweekly newsletter, so all of the sites can be able to see where all of the sites are as far as progression with getting CLARiTI up and running at their sites. All right, next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Heather O'Connell, who is the CLARiTI Program Manager over at NACC.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm so happy to be here today with you all. My name is Heather O'Connell and I'm the CLARiTI Program Manager here at NACC. So all things data management and subawards. Our Executive Director, Dr. Sarah Biber, was planning to present part of this for you, but she's unable to participate because she lost her voice, so she can't speak. As Sterling went through, one of the key goals of the CLARiTI program is to provide resources to implement standard processes across the entire ADRC site. So we're fortunate to be recipients of a grant from NIA to support these efforts. So today's focus is on how to distribute those funds to make that goal a reality. So I'll be sharing with you two key aspects of the subaward process. First, how to get your subaward set up, and second, how to get paid, including both your startup payment and ongoing payments for study execution. So to give you the lay of the land, I want to share a timeline of activities as well as roles. As we know, some of the sites are really eager to get going after those site initiation meetings. For roles, the ADRC sites, the CLARiTI leadership team, as well as NACC all have a role to play in this process. So as Sterling mentioned, that first step in the process is to complete your site startup survey. This is really a critical step as it gives us your key contacts, including the grants and finance contact, which is important for this subaward processing, as well as input that supports our budget conversations. So this is really foundational for us to understand the overall study budget. Also in the survey, you have shared when you're ready to start working on those site startup activities with NACC and the CLARiTI team. We're really using this as the basis for identifying when we'll initiate contact with your site for the subawards, and this naturally has fallen into waves. We also want to ensure a smooth transition, so we'll be identifying a few sites in the first wave. Those will be identified in the coming weeks in early March. And then NACC will be reaching out to those sites in the first waves in mid-March to begin the subaward process. Then the bulk of the sites will be in the next wave, and those will be coming shortly thereafter. Oops, I forgot on that last slide. So executing the subaward process takes around, we anticipate 5 to 7 weeks for that, and processing payments to the sites is at about 4 to 8 weeks right now. And as we step through a more detailed process here, kind of stepping through it again in a different look and feel, once you submit that site startup survey, you will be hearing from NACC to begin collecting documentation. So during this step, you'll be required to submit a number of forms to NACC necessary to generate that draft subaward agreement. Those documents include the F&A agreement, site PI and key personnel biosketches, your UEI number, and the institutional letter of intent signed by the authorized organization representative. And that needs to be addressed to the University of Washington. So you'll be working and coordinating within your organizations to collect and return these documents to NACC via email.
Hey, Heather.
Yep.
Dr. Shao has a comment. He's our program officer for CLARiTI.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, hi. So I'm John Shao. I think most of you know me. I know a lot of you people. I'm the project officer for CLARiTI. And I'm bringing things up right now because of some discussions that we're having about the indirect rate that CLARiTI is going to be paying on subcontracts. Usually, the indirect rate is whatever you've negotiated with the government. That's certainly what we do with, what NIA does with any of its awards directly. However, for projects like CLARiTI and like ADNI and like ACTC, ATRI, all those, we much prefer having a fixed rate. I'm not exactly sure what Sterling had planned. I know that there have been some discussions about this, and this isn't a decision that's fixed in stone yet. But the way I look at it is that CLARiTI is really providing you a service. I mean, is providing you FTEs, is paying for research that's going to be done that really is for you, that is really for the investigators, for the ADRCs, and only secondarily for collection and for sharing. Well, you know, I mean, it's really both. But in any case, that's the reasoning behind it. We don't want things to be. What we definitely don't want is for the process or for the rate to affect investigators or their ability to do research. But you know, we fully realize that the indirect rate is mostly governed by higher ups in your institutions. So anyway, this will be continue to be discussed. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for that comment. So this is pertaining to the F&A agreement form. So while the documents are being collected in parallel, the Wisconsin CLARiTI team will be reviewing your budget details. So in the site startup survey, you have or will be providing the budget requested to execute the study. So the CLARiTI team will be evaluating all of those budget requests and aligning them to the available funds. So they'll be reaching out to you with any potential modifications. And once that's worked out, the CLARiTI team will forward that documentation to the NACC team. Once all the required documentation is collected, the subaward agreement will be drafted by the University of Wisconsin Office of Sponsored Research along with NACC. So you will be receiving that draft agreement and your local ADRC grants and finance or award teams will be able to review, discuss any modifications necessary with NACC and ultimately approve that subaward agreement. Then it will be reviewed and approved by NACC, and then it will be considered fully executed at that time. So I wanted to stop here and pause and see if there are any questions related to the setup process.
We do have one question in the Q&A box from Karen Smith at UCSF. The question is, who shall I email to add another site contact? I already submitted our startup survey. Thanks.
So if this is related to, I don't know, Karen, if you included that site contact in the startup survey. So if you put it in the site startup survey, we will have that information and that will be incorporated into our communications moving forward. I think, Erin, you also wanted to talk about submitting that request.
Sure, thank you. You can also submit a request to clarity@medicine.wisc.edu. I'll put that in the chat as well. That's also on our linked on our website.
Great. I think I was also going to mention on this slide here to reiterate the timing. It was on the previous slide with the table, but that documentation collection section typically takes around 3 weeks, but of course it's up to the site. And then we anticipate that subaward agreement timing to take 5 to 7 weeks. So 10 weeks total for that cycle. Next, I'll review the second aspect of the subaward process, so getting paid. So the first payment or the startup payment is pretty straightforward. After the subaward agreement is executed, NACC will issue your purchase order number and you'll be able to submit your invoice. That startup payment includes startup costs, outreach costs, and your fixed personnel costs. And then NACC will generate your startup payment at that time. So that one's pretty straightforward. Next, I'll cover the plan for processing your ongoing quarterly payments during the execution of the study, which is a bit more involved. After completing all steps required for site readiness, so not just the subaward, but all of the training and your seating IRB, that complete list, as Erin covered earlier, you can begin consenting participants and conducting protocol visits. By submitting the data and case report form data to NACC, that's really indicating and notifying us that those procedures are being performed. Don't worry, there'll be additional training as you get closer to the enrollment phase that we'll walk you through those detailed steps for data submission. But in general, it involves uploading images and your blood plasma through your normal channel, and additional case report forms that include metadata about those procedures directly to NACC. Here at NACC, we'll be integrating and QCing all of those data streams. These data will be made available on the ADRC portal on a new CLARiTI payment dashboard that will be made available soon. Of course, this is in addition to making that data available for scientific purposes. But on the dashboard, you'll be able to see a list of payment eligible procedures such as MRI submissions, PET submissions, blood plasma submissions, and this will assist your site in generating your invoices. So the ADRC sites will generate your invoice for submitted data using that information from the dashboard, and you can also include the personnel costs in those quarterly invoices. So the invoice will be submitted through the normal channels, and that will be outlined in your Subaward agreement. So that's sending via email to uwashington@GHX Invoicing. And NACC will review and approve the invoice and generate the payment. Ultimately, the ADRC portal payment dashboard will be updated to reflect those procedures as paid. Then as you continue to submit data and case report forms, the process continues again the next quarter. I'll stop there. Are there any questions regarding payments? So the startup or the procedure level payments?
We do have one question. Andreas Schmidt asks, is this a cost reimbursable subaward or a fixed price subaward or one of each?
There are both aspects to it. So some are fixed cost, and this will be outlined in the payment table. Those of you that completed the site startup survey will have gotten a glimpse into that. Of some of the fixed costs, and then these procedure type payments will be based on data submitted. I don't know, Sterling or Erin, if you have anything more to add on that.
That sounds right. Colleen can fact check. She's nodding. Okay.
And what was the table called that is outlined in, Heather, one more time?
Oh, just the payments table.
Great.
Yeah. So that'll be a section that goes within the subaward. So we started capturing that initial data from the sites via the survey, and we'll be working through that and incorporating into the subaward agreement.
Great.
Okay, so the next slide is kind of pulling it all together. So this is really another look at the timeline. So as I mentioned, the sites will be contacted based on your declared availability in the startup survey as well as capacity. So this will likely fall into 3 waves. The first thing I want to point out here is that the site readiness checklist can begin at any time. For example, we're aware some of you have already started seating your IRB. And for subawards, we'll begin reaching out to those first sites in mid-March. With that process taking about 10 weeks to collect the documentation and execute the award, and assuming all readiness, other readiness activities are completed, we anticipate that first enrollment to be in the May timeframe. Subsequent waves will follow with the same process, so those timelines are shifted out accordingly on here. So we're going to be working as quickly as possible to move through each of your sites so that you can get up and going in an exciting trial. in this exciting trial. I wanted to conclude this section by sharing information of how to contact our NACC team. So I've included Dr. Sarah Biber, our executive director's information, as well as my own, and wanted to introduce to you Jingyang Jia, or Jane, our NACC grants and finance manager. So any questions regarding the subaward specifically can be directed to nacgrants@uw.edu. And please don't hesitate to reach out and ask any questions related to that. I think Beth was going to share about the upcoming webinar.
Yeah, we did have one more subaward related question
Okay,
come in.
yep.
So Ashley Emerson asks, how will an annual increase in scan expenses be accounted for in the subaward?
I'll maybe ask, Colleen, you were on the call.
That's actually a great question, and I may have to do a little bit of digging with you on that, Ashley, as to what you mean by the scan expenses, if you mean personnel time, or if you mean engaging with the various people you are going to be uploading those scans to.
The actual expenses through our campus partners for the scans themselves. If we have a fiscal year that is offset from the timeline of the subaward, if there's an increase. And it's going back to the comment earlier about the fixed prices in the subaward versus the variable prices.
Got it. If you have not already completed the survey, I would say let's go ahead and do that, and you can put notes in there that it may increase if it tends to annually, so that we can take that into account when reviewing the budget information. It's also something that we can look at subsequent years. Sterling, did you want to jump in there?
I just wanted to ask, I think we may have built in an inflation of 1 or 2% per year. And that's something we can check too if we haven't done that.
Yeah, I know we did
That's
that for
helpful.
salaries, but I don't recall whether or not we did it for the actual procedure. So we can check that.
Okay, and you'll let us know.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Heather, for walking us through that. So before we open it up for more questions, I just wanted to advertise our next scheduled webinar, which will take place on March 27th at 2:30 Eastern. You could register with this QR code, and there will also be an email that's sent out. So we're planning to have these webinars, pretty regularly throughout CLARiTI, and especially in this first year. We'll be focusing a lot on startup procedures, at the beginning, but, really are excited to start integrating some of the more, scientific components of CLARiTI into these webinars. And we'll start that with talks from both Dr. Monica Rivera-Mint and Dr. Akakwa, who are leading the inclusion core of CLARiTI. So they'll be speaking to us during this next webinar. And then we'll cover some startup procedures as well. So hope you could make that webinar. And then from there, so I think that concludes the slides for today's webinar, and we'd like to open it up for remaining questions.
Thanks, Beth. I just want to take a moment and shout out to NACC for just acknowledge for the way you're supporting CLARiTI and acknowledge the way you continue to transform yourself. Thank you, NACC. You've just been so responsive to the needs of the ADRCs. Also, I wanted to comment on John Shao's comment earlier about the indirect cost rate. We have asked for 30% indirect cost. This was based on the precedent from ADNI. And so we really do want to try to adhere to that as much as we possibly can, so that we can get all the amazing science done that we said that we would do. But yeah, thank you for your attention to that. What kind of questions do people have?
We can allow those to filter in the Q&A box. which will be a helpful place for us to not only read them all, but also type our answer in case people are joining at a later time. But I do see one from Kathy Kramer in the chat that says, we received an MTA addendum from NCCRAD. Is there a scope of work available, or will we need to, or is there a scope of work available / will need in order to process? Kathy, do you want to unmute and maybe ask your question a little bit more clearly?
Hi, yes, we have an MTA agreement with NCCRAD already, but we received an addendum for the CLARiTI study. But in order to process it, I need a scope of work for, our site. And I couldn't find that in any of the paperwork.
Yeah, so that will be available within your subaward agreement. We can look into getting that to you earlier than going through the whole process. We can see if that's a possibility and get back to you, Kathy.
That would be great. Yes, even just that paragraph would be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be something we can ask NCCRAD to insert in the MTA, so it's right there for you.
It sounds like that would be helpful for UCSF, ADRC, and the UNC Duke one as well.
Yeah, I've been hearing from a couple of sites as well that they need a scope of work in order to process their seed application. So we'll look into this and notify the sites. Thank you.
Anything else?
We do have another question. In the budget survey, is the salary amount direct costs plus 30% indirects? Our research admin department requests we take the total and back out our full indirect costs.
We would like all of the responses in the survey to be direct costs only. We are asking what your indirect cost rate is, percentage, as a separate item on there. But if you could list the responses for the procedures, for the salaries, all of that as direct costs, we'd appreciate it.
Sterling, it looks like there's a question for you in the chat about should the MRI T1 and FLAIR be the same parameters as scan?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. I'll just take a moment to elaborate on MRI. If that MRI T1 and FLAIR is done, it's the scan protocol, which is the same as ADNI4, then the MRI is successful and complete. We'll be adding on some additional scans to that. One is a 2-for-1 SWI, a susceptibility weighted scan for microbleeds, which will also get at quantitative susceptibility, which is useful for looking at certain patterns of neurodegeneration and other things. But we'll talk about MRI in an upcoming webinar. But yes, to answer your question, Brian, it's the scan parameters.
Yeah, and the additional sequences Sterling mentioned too are optional. That's not required.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. That's what I was going to follow up on with Sterling, was just to ask whether the sequences other than the T1 and the FLAIR are going to be essentially left up to different centers to either choose what you have suggested for CLARiTI, or run our own slightly different versions of those that would then not be uploaded because they wouldn't be CLARiTI specific.
Yeah, that's right. If they're not the scan sequences or the CLARiTI add-ons, you can feel free to run those, your own local stuff, if your time permits and if they've consented to that. And but yeah, those would be separate and you wouldn't need to upload those.
Hey, Sterling. Rebecca Lepping also asks, You had mentioned a few PET tracers that you will have specific agreements for. Will CLARiTI organize centralized agreements for all scan-approved tracers, or only the 3 that you mentioned?
Such a great question, and we'll be working with your site, Rebecca, very soon at an initiation meeting. But just to remind you, just remind everybody, the IND that Erin mentioned is about 3 of the tracers that need a central IND in order to work with these companies. For sites that are doing PIB, they will need their own, you'll need your own IND, and you'll attach the CLARiTI protocol to your IND. For the very few sites that are producing FTP, you'll be in the same boat. You're producing FTP under your own IND, even though it's an FDA-approved tracer. When you produce it yourself, it's under an IND. So those will be covered indirectly through us. And we also have agreements with LMI and Lilly for their approved tracers. And those will be covered under the protocol, but they don't need to be under an IND. But we will be able to support florbetaben, florbetapir, and flortaucipir when those are delivered to you as an FDA-approved product. And those contracts will be in place. You won't see bills for those kinds of doses if they're delivered to you, because the companies will work directly with CLARiTI. Does that answer your question, Rebecca?
It does. Thank you very much, Sterling.
Okay.
And then additionally, Adam Mecca asks, will PET scanners approved be the same as for scan?
Yes, that's right, Adam. We inherit the scan approvals. Basically, we'll use the same scanners as scan, and scan is effectively functioning as our imaging core for this project.
This is John Chow again. If I can interrupt, I wanted to get people to look at Alessandra's chat, and it really emphasized that CLARiTI is really supposed to be helping you do things. That's why Sterling and Beth and all the other people are working so hard on this. I wanted to point out that it is very much coordinated with SCAN, and also, I mean, with NACC and NCCRAD too, obviously, but also to remind you about the new requirements in the RFA for your ADRC renewal, which will be coming up next year or the following year for those of you that haven't already gone through it, and that will require 24 sets of ATN scans in the application. And CLARiTI, all the work that you're doing here will enable that. And the indirect rate there is unaffected. I mean, that's a whole separate payment rate, but now we're getting too complicated.
Yeah, thank you, John. And we know that those P30 requires you to pay for those 24 out of your P30 budget. And we're working on a plan to try to have CLARiTI support you if you want our support. And we asked for that in the survey. Would you like CLARiTI to help support you in achieving your 24 ATN sets? For example, we can negotiate tracer costs for you. You can use our protocol. You can use the CLARiTI protocol. By our, I mean all of our protocol. And take advantage of that infrastructure that we'll be providing. So if that's of interest, let us know in the survey, or if you've already submitted it, we'll look there. But let us know how we can support you in achieving your P30 requirement.
There's another question from Sandra Weintraub. Are you anticipating protocol changes or add-ons within the first year or subsequent years?
I think the answer is yes. We've just, maybe I don't know fully what your question is, Sandy, but yeah, we're already submitting a protocol change imminently in the next few weeks. And this will evolve as we get feedback from you all, and as we try to see how we as a group of centers can utilize this kind of project to make our lives easier, if such a thing is possible.
Sandra, I see your hand up. Did you want to elaborate on that further?
She's asking to be unmuted.
Yes, and I'm asking her to unmute now. It seems like you'll have to unmute yourself. You do have permission to.
But we can get back to you, Sandy. Either follow up offline or in the next few minutes.
Lon Schneider has a question in the chat for John. Is John saying that CLARiTI's 24 sets would count for the ADRC RFA requirement?
No, no, absolutely not. No double dipping.
Yeah, I think John was arguing that, like the infrastructure building we're doing with CLARiTI hopefully should trickle over to kind of helping the flow of PET at your site. Not that CLARiTI funding would pay for the scanning acquisition costs for the 24 required P30 scans.
Thank you for clarifying that. Trey Hedden asks, if a participant receives PET and MRI through the P30, but then would be a candidate for advanced MRI or FDG, can that part only be done through CLARiTI?
Say that again. Let's see. I see it here.
Yeah, in the Q&A box.
The PET and MR through P30. That's a great question. That's throwing me for a loop. We were thinking that the amyloid and tau scan would be the core defining feature of CLARiTI. But you're asking if you do that through your P30, can you just pay for the advanced MR and FDG through CLARiTI? We'll have to give that some thought. It seems like it's practically it seems possible, but is that what we want? I don't have an answer for you just yet. We'll talk that through with our executive team, unless anybody else has thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think we should talk about that. I mean, we definitely have talked about exceptions on the MRI piece. So for instance, with VCID, if they're already undergoing MRI under that program, not requiring repeat MRI. But yeah, I think Sterling, this is a good example to bring up with the executive committee.
Thanks, Trey. And we have Sandra's comment, will you be providing reliance agreements or using sites like Smart IRB so sites can seed IRB?
Most of the institutions should already have an agreement with WCG. Likely they've already used WCG or single IRB for other projects at your institutions, but you will have to seed your IRB locally, and then the reliance agreement will be generated through your institution and WCG specific for CLARiTI. So we're not using a separate site like Smart IRB.
Also, we want to you to think about when you're recruiting for CLARiTI, think about how this will be strategically useful to you at your site. Can it augment local R01s that are linked to your center, or fill some other strategic priority for you locally? That's okay to do, and we're writing the protocol as flexibly as we can so that you can do that without double dipping, of course. But we want you to be able to leverage this project for your own center. Other questions? All right.
All right, I think we should wrap up there. So we'll see you guys next month, hopefully at the next webinar. And thanks again to the NACC team for the slides and for their work on CLARiTI, and really looking forward to seeing further progress on the startup front as we move forward over the next few months.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.